introduce your host, Fino. It's Sasha the Legit King.
It's the start of the show, time to walk through the smoke. When I enter the ring, I jump over the ropes. I feel like Mysterio, I ain't no joke. Titles, I held them both, call me Chris Jericho. Time to cash in my money in the bank. Just like Sheamus when he beat Roman Reigns. Meet me in the cage, like Undertaker when he met Kane. I don't play games, I'm the Triple H. The crowd screaming, you rock like my name's Dwayne. The crowd screaming, you suck like your Kurt Angle. In the ring, I'm the boss just like Sasha Banks. So you'll get whipped like the intro from Sable. King of my stable, don't matter the label. Smackdown or Raw, you get put through a table. Pushed off a ladder or choked with a cable. Throw me a chair, I'ma give him a facial. It's the start of the show, time to walk through the smoke. When I enter the ring, I jump over the ropes.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the wrestling podcast known as Ring Champs, hosted by your boy. It's your boy, Just Fino. And of course, I'm here with the one and only Sasha, the Legit King. Sasha, say what's up to the people.
What's up, people?
How are you doing, Sasha?
Doing good, Happy to be here, happy to be alive. One day, another day above ground, can't complain. No.
Yeah, I definitely can't complain about that. It's been good. Everything's been going good, having a good day. So I've just been hyped for this episode, like for a while now.
Oh, I know. It's your fave.
This means a lot to me. Just like, I love this guy. I'm just going to say that. I love the person that we're going to be talking about today. And I can't wait to get into it with you because this is going to be pretty epic. But before we get into what the main topic is today, okay? I got to tell you a little story. Okay. And it's a question that it led to a question in my mind that I had to ask you because I don't know why I was just randomly thinking about it. But so you remember when we did an episode, we had a question each other. We were talking about like which path will we take to go as a wrestler?
Yep.
So I was thinking about that, and I don't know why. But it popped in my head, and I started talking to myself. I know sometimes, I know it's weird, but I just had a little mini conversation with myself.
I'm not shocked to hear that, but go ahead.
And it basically led to this. I had read this article. It was talking about like kids and raising kids, and I don't know how they connected. I don't know how I connected those two, but then I started thinking about like, what if like my kids wanted to become a wrestler? Like, is that something that I would want my kid to get into? Because for me, like, whenever I have kids, I would hope that the one thing I would definitely try to do is that I would want my kids to like the same thing I do. Now, they don't have to, but at the young age, so I can enjoy the time I'm spending with them, I want them to at least like something that I like. I don't want to sit here and watch Barney all day, okay? I want them.
I mean, that's fair. I mean,
I just want to, get them into watching wrestling with me or playing the game, so they want to play games, and then I'll be happy to play with them. Now, if they don't like it, then I can do what they like.
Yeah.
But
the compromise. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna at least try. So I was just thinking about, the kids and getting them into wrestling, and I had a question because you have kids, obviously.
Yes.
If your kids wanted to get into wrestling, one, would you be happy for them to get into wrestling, or is that something that you would want to like keep them away from? Just to be as a fan, but not actually just get into it.
I wouldn't discourage them. Like when my oldest, my daughter, she started watching wrestling just at a young age. I mean, I wouldn't say she's like a super fan, but she definitely knows. And she said it. She's like, she wanted to be a wrestler. But I feel like she said that kind of more to connect with me. But if she ever wanted to do it, then I wouldn't discourage her. I would tell her at least try to make a run in getting some kind of education first and then go for it.
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't discourage her, no, or any of my sons either. If they wanted to do it, I wouldn't discourage them at all.
Would you tell them the knowledge you have, or would you let them learn it on their own?
I mean, obviously, not really being in the wrestling industry, I only have a certain amount of knowledge, but anything I could, contribute, yeah, I definitely would. Because I feel like there's definitely gonna be some things that they run into that I can't help them with. But if there is something that I can tell them, like, oh yeah, X, Y, and Z, I would do it. Because, as their parent, like, you don't want to give them all the answers. You kind of want to lead them to it sometimes, and kind of let them kind of figure it out for themselves. But there's definitely times where you're just kind of like, hey, this is the way it is. So, but yeah, no, I would try to help as much as I can and try to set them up in the right place, in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that because, like, for me, like, I would love for them to do it. I just don't know. I just want to make sure that they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, it's not an easy life.
It's not an easy life at all.
You gotta love it. Like,
it's a lot easier now, but it's still rough, especially in the very beginning. If you're doing just indies or whatever, it's rough there. But if you could somehow get noticed by the right people, then honestly, you don't even have to really be noticed by other wrestlers. You just got to be noticed by just being an athlete in sports these days with the the NXT program that they have, the NILs.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff like that. There's so many ways into the business now.
Damn, where was I when that happened?
Right?
Then again, I didn't play sports in college, so I really can't say nothing.
Yeah, but they're signing people out of high school too. There's some high school people I think they're assigned. I mean, I know AEW has people. They got two people. That Wayne guy, Nick Wayne, I think is his name. That he was a high schooler.
Look, I played soccer in my freshman year of high school, and then I was an athletic trainer the rest of the time. So unless they're checking for student trainers, I don't think they were going to pick you, girl.
You should have kept going. You could have gotten noticed. You could have been the superstar that they noticed first and been the first one signed.
I mean, maybe I stuck with soccer, but then I became a trainer. But then I met Mr. Legit King. You know what? Maybe I should have rethought.
But hey, I was just curious because it's a very interesting, it's just an interesting topic. Like, just the ways of wrestling now, so many ways in, and I would be happy for my kids if they want to be a wrestler one day. It would actually fill a lot of my, personal dreams and stuff like that I had. So if they could live it, I'll be happy for them.
I'd have to check myself on that too. Like, especially like I said with my daughter saying that she wanted to, I would really want to make sure that that's something that they want to do because it's such a difficult life. Just not saying it like, oh, I just want to do it just because it's like, because my daughter will often ask me, she's like, well, why didn't you be a wrestler? And it was like, there was factors why I didn't ultimately go for it, but I also knew from a young age, I always said like, and it's different now. Like, this is obviously before, you had your Becky Lynch's and your Lacey Evans and all these moms, your Mickie James that are, Trish Stratus moms and wrestlers. But, back in the day, it's like you really didn't have that. You didn't really have a lot of women who were mothers and wrestlers. So, coming up, it was like I either had to be one or the other. And I always said if motherhood came before I became a wrestler, I wasn't sure if I'd be able to do it. Like, I'd have to give my all to one.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
But like I said, it's different now. Like, it's totally different now. Like, when Becky Lynch had her first daughter, I was just about to find out I was pregnant with my youngest. Our kids are 2 days apart. And it's like, I would never have thought such a big name like that would have a baby come back and still be big. It's like, that was unheard of.
Right.
So it's different now. But I'd want to make sure that if they're going to devote their life to it, like, this is what you want to do, You gotta do it. And I
Yeah.
have to check myself and make sure, like, I don't want to live vicariously through you, because that's a difficult thing. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself to make it, and then feel like you have to make your parents happy. So it's a lot to think about.
That's one thing. You brought up pressure, and it's crazy how pressure. It's such a very impactful word on everything, on people's lives. You know, I think that goes perfectly into who we're talking about today, because the topic we're talking about today is we are continuing our What If series, ladies and gentlemen. And we got, high regards for the last one. And we're bringing it back for this one. And that word pressure, it means a lot more, especially when you're a generational superstar, a family, your whole family has been in professional wrestling. It's all you lived, that's all you known. And I mean, I just couldn't imagine the amount of pressure that is among these superstars who are second generational, third generational, I don't know, what do they call, just fourth generational?
Yeah.
We do have that. In fact, the person we're talking about has a fourth generation in the business right now. So Sasha, how about you jump into the topic, the exact person we are talking about for our What If series today?
All right. Well, if you haven't guessed, especially by that fourth generation talk, today we are talking about The Rock. Specifically, we are talking about what would happen if The Rock's crossover into Hollywood wasn't necessarily as successful as it ultimately became. I mean, we all know now that he is the biggest movie star in the world. His films, just the films he's been in, have grossed $3.5 billion in North America and $12.5 billion worldwide. He has been at this since 2001, and now 22 years later, I mean, if you think about it, his movie career lasted longer than his wrestling career. So, I mean, and really the wrestling is what kind of helped him cross over into Hollywood. So it's no doubt that he's the most successful wrestler to cross over into mainstream ever. I mean, if you look back in the 80s with Hulk Hogan, he was the biggest thing going in wrestling by far. And he got his start in one of the biggest movie franchises of all time. He was Thunder Lips in Rocky III. And people thought, like, he's going to be the one. He's going to cross over and going to be an actor, the next big action hero. And it didn't really quite pan out that way for Hulk Hogan. And I think it's safe to say, like, after Hogan, it was a long time before they had anybody even remotely close to crossing over. And then The Rock came. He debuted, I believe it was 1996, correct? At the Survivor Series?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, going from, for a short time, he was Flex Savannah, but, we all kind of, like MIB, neuralize that from our minds. Then he was Rocky Maivia, then he transitioned into The Rock, and I think it's safe to say, like, once he kind of found his groove as The Rock and that personality came out, it was clearly a matter of time, because, I guess there was always that back and forth, who was bigger, him or Austin, but I think, and this is no disrespect to Steve Austin, he's crossed over too, but not to the effect Hollywood-wise as The Rock.
No.
Yeah, but I think The Rock's appeal was that I think he was the one that was tailor-made to go into mainstream. I think Austin, this is not to pigeonhole him into wrestling, but he was professional wrestling. And even if you hear interviews with today, like, he's still a fan of professional wrestling, whereas The Rock was kind of more into sports entertainment. Austin definitely has catchphrases, but he was more of an ass kicker. The Rock had the glasses and the $500 shirts and the catchphrases and the hair. Like, he was that was his lane. So, and people noticed, like, he was at the VMAs, he guest hosted Saturday Night Live. I remember sitting up and watching that. Like, I had never watched SNL before in my life, but The Rock was going to be on there. I was going to watch that. So I remember watching it. He played his dad on an episode of that 70s show. And then 2001 came. And I think you would know more about this because you actually saw this movie, and I did not. So
Are you talking about the Mummy?
yes,
Well,
The
first
Mummy
it was
Returns.
The Mummy Returns, yeah. So Mummy Returns, he did I call it a cameo because I mean he was only in there for like a couple minutes, not even a couple minutes, but yeah, it was really the next movie that he did, The Scorpion King, where that was his first major role, lead role, and I thought, you know, the movie was great. I love that whole Mummy series and Scorpion King and all that. So he did a really good job.
I thought it was crazy. I remember when he was in The Mummy Returns, and like, I remember, man, all that publicity, and they would talk about it. He was doing all the media, and then I was shocked that he wasn't even in the movie that long. Like, I thought he was gonna be all up and through the movie, but he really wasn't. I think it was just the beginning, right?
Yeah, so he was actually in the movie. He was actually like the Scorpion King. He actually was the Scorpion King, but he was the monster, the Scorpion King. Like, it was actually like a scorpion like thing that he was. It wasn't actually they did like a spin-off, which was what the Scorpion King's life was before he became that thing, in a way.
Okay.
It's how he became the actual Scorpion King.
Okay, yeah. So, like I said, when they did The Mummy Returns, he was all over the media. And even with that cameo, I mean, they felt confident enough to give him his own movie. Like, the next one, he was the leading man in a movie. And like we said, that was The Scorpion King in 2002. But for the sake of today's episode, our question would be, what if The Scorpion King, his first starring role, like his first leading man role, wasn't that successful? What would happen? How would that have impacted The Rock's career? How would that have impacted wrestling? Because like I said, before The Rock, the last person that had a chance of crossing over was Hulk Hogan, and that really didn't work out too well. And I think wrestling now is a little bit more accepted, and I think because of people like The Rock as a form of entertainment. But I mean, we all remember back in the day, being a wrestling fan wasn't something that people automatically understood. You know, the first thing they would say is, "Oh, it's fake," the F word that we all do not like. It was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of entertainment. And with The Rock being able to do what he did, it kind of changed that. So you're seeing a lot more people with opportunities. But what would happen if Scorpion King hadn't performed very well? So that's our question today. What would happen if The Rock hadn't been able to successfully cross over into Hollywood?
That's a very deep. It's really deep. But before I think we just jump in, just let everyone know, you know, who The Rock is as a performer. I mean, this is a 8-time WWE champion, 2-time WCW champion. You know, he's a 2-time Intercontinental champion, 5-time Tag Team champion, a Royal Rumble winner, Triple Crown. He's won 9 Slammies. I mean, this man is, you mentioned it, along with Stone Cold. A lot of people put them on the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, or WWE. I'm not going to say all professional wrestling, but just WWE for sure. I have him of all professional wrestling, but that's just another topic for another day. You know, he's easily, I mean, one of the most loved superstars of all time.
Yep.
I mean, this truly evolutionary. The greatest on the mic. I don't think there's anyone. There's people that have come close, but it's still like close is like still like you're 200 yards away, like type thing. But it's still, this is The Rock we're talking about, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And let's be honest, yes, he had a very successful movie career. You mentioned all the accolades and how much he's grossed and all of that. Number one action star in the world, and anytime he's in a movie, people run to see it. It don't even matter. But this is the thing. Well, I guess everyone but Sasha, since she never seen Scorpion King, which that just blows my mind.
How you gonna put me out there like that? How you
look, I'm sorry.
It's just not my bag, all right?
I mean, Gridiron Gang, the Game Plan.
No,
like,
I did see those.
You seen those? Okay.
Yes,
well, I guess.
And remember,
okay.
we talked about I hadn't seen anything with Fast and Furious.
Exactly. The biggest movie he's ever had. The movie that put him on the map.
Well, there you go. I saw Hobbs and Shaw. There you go. See,
but that wasn't it. That wasn't even it. It was Fast 5.
I know. Oh, I didn't.
Fast 5 is what led to everything, to the huge amount of success that The Rock is having now. He was just so great in that. But anyway.
Super Pets, though, a couple weeks ago, it was very cute. I didn't think I'd like it, but it was cute.
Look.
Blame my kids for that.
Yes. Okay. Well, look, this is The Rock we're talking about, right? And I'm so excited because there's so many things I just want to jump into.
It's gonna burst.
I don't know where to start because there's so many things I can go with. But this is you said 2002, right? That was the movie. So we're basically referring to 2003 on.
Yep.
And I guess the best way to start this off, Sasha, let's just go ahead and think about matchups that this man could have had. Potential feuds, legendary opponents that he could have faced. I think we could just jump in. I don't know if you want to start it off for me, but I'm just going to go ahead and say one that we didn't get. And I think that it's one we've had a missed opportunity several times. Their paths basically never crossed at all. As far for a match, they've been together, worked together several times, but never actually in a match, which is very, very shocking when you think of these two legendary careers. But I'm just going to start it off with a hot one, and that's the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Yep, that's what I had too.
I mean, just think I think there was I want to say it was like a year and a half that they really had of being on the roster at the same time. You remember Michaels got hurt his back. He came back on TV, but he was more like a GM. He was the commissioner of the WWE. And The Rock was the heel with the corporation at this time. And they kind of had those little back and forth with DX and stuff, but they never, Shawn was in wrestling. Then The Rock, The Rock lost his title when The Rock left in 2002. And lost the match to Brock Lesnar. It was a year later. Was it? No, I'm sorry. The same night that he left and lost his match to Brock Lesnar was the night that HBK finally came back and faced Triple H. Mm-hmm. So pretty much, and then when The Rock returned again, they just weren't on. There was just no way for that to happen because The Rock came back specifically for certain feuds, even during the Hollywood Rock era. It was really just to put over Goldberg and other things, and of course Stone Cold's last match.
Right.
And then he came back again, just specifically for WrestleMania 20 and Mick Foley to do the Rock and Sock connection against Evolution. So there was just never ever a chance for this thing to happen, and obviously that is I think that's probably the dream match, at least for me, in wrestling, in WWE, for sure, that we just never got to see. Do you have? I know you said you had that on your list. Do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I do actually. So another one that, I mean, you could say that they did. I don't think they ever had a singles match, but he was involved when Mick Foley came back, and I understood why at the time they didn't do this, because he was preoccupied with Mick Foley. But I really would have liked to see more of Randy Orton and The Rock, especially since, you know, Randy had the same pedigree. You know, he's a third generation, and, you know, at the time he was the legend killer. You know, I understand him and Mick Foley were going at it. Which, side note, him and Mick Foley's hardcore match, oh, one of my faves. I love that.
Love it.
Love it. Like Backlash 2004, one of my comfort, I guess, pay-per-views, now known as PLEs, to go back and watch. It was a really good show. But yeah, I would have really liked to see, because I mean, Orton, he was getting in there with, you know, Mick Foley. A couple years later, you know, he was in there with Undertaker. I just wonder how a match with Randy Orton and The Rock, because you can kind of see a parallel. I mean, obviously Randy's not as talkative. He doesn't have that, like, just outward charisma as The Rock does, but he has his own little flavor to him. And there's some parallels, I think. So I think that would have been really interesting to see if we're still kind of talking about that early on when The Rock came back.
Well, I would even say another thing around that early on time that we didn't get. We didn't really get. Well, no, we never got this. The Rock versus Triple H, but at WrestleMania.
Just one-on-one, yeah.
One-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got the 4-way. I believe that was what, WrestleMania 2000, I think it was. With, what was it, Big Show and Foley. But we never got the one-on-one at Mania. It's always been at every other. I think every pay-per-view ever has it
around it, except for that one.
Yeah, besides Mania. And I think that, you know, obviously they teased it several times in the last, you know, a couple years ago. I remember they had that backstage segment where they talked about how they could fill out stadiums and they'll blow off the roof off that stadium if it had a roof and all this stuff.
I would have watched it, yeah.
Yeah, like, and it's definitely a match that I think that around that time, it would definitely have been great to see, because we know their legendary feud. That's probably his number. You can argue that's his number one feud, you know, I know some people say Austin, but I think Triple H is easily The Rock's number one feud of his career. Another one.
The Rock is The Rock without that Triple H.
Oh, of course.
Triple H is like a true blue heel, and
I think Triple H is the greatest heel of all time. And he basically, from the heel side, carried an entire era.
Because you need a good heel.
You need a good heel to create, you know, I know Vince is up there. I know Vince was a massive heel too, but he wasn't the wrestler, even though he wrestled sometimes.
There was
he wasn't the wrestling heel that Triple H was. And I think that's why I have him number one, because of that. And I can go all day on Triple H, because I absolutely love everything about Triple H in his career as a heel. But another matchup that we didn't get that I think would have happened if The Rock had stayed. I think that's something that we need to clarify too. So The Rock not being successful in that movie, we're assuming that he would have stayed. He would have came back to WWE after that movie and stayed, right?
Right.
So if he is staying, that means that another matchup that could have been great, and it would have been another WrestleMania match that we've never gotten with The Rock. Imagine The Undertaker versus The Rock at WrestleMania.
I had him on here too.
I mean, that is another, not only, you know, I would not have The Rock beat Undertaker. I would continue the streak, by the way, even though I love The Rock. But that's just another matchup, another big name that The Undertaker could have had and made that legendary streak even more legendary. That's because true. He didn't really face, besides Michaels and Triple H and Flair. I guess you could say Flair, even though Flair was older.
That was a good match, though. I loved that match too.
Yeah, I loved it.
But
there wasn't like that many huge names.
No.
On his streak. So having another legendary name like The Rock up there would have been would have been pretty damn amazing, and that would just add it to the Undertaker's overall like aura. I think that's something that would just been amazing. The Rock, we've seen their matches before. They have great chemistry already. So imagine at a Mania, that just would have been awesome. What else you got for me, Sasha? I know you got more matchups.
All right, so if we go just a little bit down the line, I know we talked about it on our Eddie Guerrero episode, talking about kind of running it back with Eddie and Edge. But again, Edge, I think, would have been an interesting, especially like rated R superstar Edge. I know we're going just a little bit further down the years, but I mean, think about that. Edge was definitely coming into his own. He was having feuds with Cena. Of course, the whole Matt Hardy thing kind of propelled that, and he was Mr. Money in the Bank. And then think about this, when The Rock was feuding with Triple H and he had Stephanie by his side. I mean, some of the things he said about Stephanie were pretty slanderous. Think about a rated R superstar with Alita, the kind of things The Rock would have said. That seems to be like right up his alley. So I think that would have been another legendary feud for Edge, as I feel like he'd finally found his groove as a single star, and a feud with The Rock, I think, really would have helped propel that. Also, kind of running it back, Y2J and The Rock. I feel like when, they had their feud over the WCW title and the Invasion, Chris Jericho was in a very interesting position in his career. And I would argue that even though he had the titles, he'd been undisputed champion, he'd beat The Rock and Stone Cold in one evening, as he would say, he was never positioned as that top guy. And you can tell that kind of nod at him and his character. So I wonder, especially kind of later on when he became kind of serious, Chris Jericho, like how that would have played off of him, I always liked the chemistry in the ring. Go ahead.
No. I accidentally hit my mic, but it was just because I was jumping with excitement because I did not think about Y2J.
He was in a very different spot, and now as he grew as a performer, again, like I said, we're not really throwing out specific years, but just kind of going down the line, seeing how people were evolving and growing. Because a lot of people, like I said, he had wrestled The Undertaker. He had never wrestled HBK. He had wrestled Y2J. He had been in there with Edge, but that was like more tag teams with Edge and Christian, when they were kind of, dabbling in the main event as a tag team. But thinking about the possibilities as these performers continue to grow over the years, it's amazing to see what could have been. You got another one?
No, I definitely do. So I'm gonna go a little bit back to because you jumped to rated R superstar Edge, but I'm gonna go to a pre-rated R superstar Edge. I'm gonna go to a talent that I believe his start. Now, correct me because I always mess up the year he started. Okay, but I believe he started in 2004. It was either 2003 or 2004 that he started. And then he started to do this little rap gimmick.
Lord, he's on my list too, but okay.
He started off with a rap gimmick. I believe he was the doctor of Thugonomics.
I think it was
John Cena.
I think it was 2000.
I can't remember the year he started. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
That part, I always mix up the years. But just think about a young John Cena with The Rock. I mean, we've gotten the one in a lifetime match with Rock and Cena. Don't get me wrong, that was a dream match when it happened, for sure. But as much as that generated, I think just imagine how better Cena would have been in his later years. And I know I'm jumping the gun on the other effects of this, but just imagine a young Cena working with a legend like The Rock and how much better he would have gotten. I think of it like I think the perfect moment that now I don't think that Cena would have had the same mistake, But just think, do you remember when my tribal chief had a promo with Cena?
Yes.
And Cena, they were hyping up their match. I forgot the pay-per-view that they were hyping it up, but it was just a random pay-per-view, to be honest with you. That they were having their first singles match, I believe it was. And Cena made Roman look stupid because Roman forgot his words.
Yes.
And it was that moment that changed Roman basically forever. Like, it was just that moment. I think The Rock and Cena could have had a similar type of thing. Just imagine Cena using The Rock as a mentor, especially earlier in his career. Or maybe not even a mentor, just someone to look at and be like, okay, so that's how I become this, and that's how I do this. I think that just would have made Cena so much better as a performer. And they would have had the earlier feuds, and then when Cena became the man that he would have became, and that's a question whether he got there or not. But just imagine if Cena did. They have those earlier feuds, and now their later feuds would have probably meant even more special. It just would have been building blocks, on building blocks, and I think we would have got something very special. What do you think about the Cena one?
I mean, I agree. I'm probably gonna have like unpopular opinion. I wasn't completely like moved with Cena and Rock, and I think before you get on me, I think that might have been where I was at the time as a wrestling fan. I think that was like one of the first times where I wasn't completely dialed into wrestling as I had previously been. So to me, the once in a lifetime, I understood, I get it, but I think just where I was as a wrestling fan, it didn't really rock my world as it probably should have. But I do agree that The Rock and Cena had something, and I am curious if The Rock and Cena had interactions early in Cena's career, how that would have impacted them. So I definitely agree with your point on that. So since we're doing that, since we're talking about people getting their start, I feel like I want to save this one for last. Okay, I'll save that one for my last point. I know I just talked about Y2J, and again, kind of feeling like he was in a position where he was looked at as the top guy. He was the title holder, but there were two people ahead of him. The next guy I kind of wanted to talk about with a potential feud. Now, they did wrestle each other, but he was also in that position where he did hold the title, but he wasn't looked at as the top guy. And I found that potential feud a little bit more interesting than what we eventually got, even though what we got was match of a lifetime. And I'm talking about CM Punk.
Okay, I was a little confused because I didn't know where you were going with that, but then I like that. Go ahead.
Remember, he held the title and then he lost the title to The Rock.
He lost the title to The Rock, Royal Rumble.
Yep, and then it became Rock and Cena.
Right.
And all that work he had done beforehand, like I said, kind of like Y2J, like he was supposed to be on paper the guy, but you had two people that were higher on the totem pole. And I feel a little bit more, I wouldn't say The Rock and Stone Cold was let me change that. I wouldn't say The Rock and Y2J would have been my pick over The Rock and Austin. Like, you can't do that. Like, Rock and Austin, that's what it is. That's on a whole nother level. But to me, I was more interested in the possibilities of like a Punk and Rock more so than a Rock and Cena. That's just me personally. So I really would have wanted to see more of what Punk and Rock had to, instead of feeling like Punk was just kind of a placeholder to get us to where we ultimately was going to be. I think he deserved a proper feud with The Rock.
I agree with that. No, I do. CM Punk, one of the top names, and I think that if they did have an extended feud, I think it would have been as amazing. Even if they would have went to Mania instead of Rock Cena 2, I think it would have been great. Maybe I don't know what Cena would have done, but it didn't really matter. But I agree with you. I think CM Punk was in that spot similar to Jericho. I think that's what made them so special, though. Like, being in that spot made them actually better than probably they were if they had the spot, because it made them work harder and stuff like that. So I get your point, and I understand that. I do agree. CM Punk, Rock, two of the best talkers to ever live. I mean, we saw what Cena Rock was, and I think CM Punk is better than Cena on the mic. And not by much, but he's better.
Because wasn't that Punk promo, was that again where he said that his arms are just too short to box with God or something like that?
Yes, it was.
Man, bars. I was like, what?
That was, I mean, the short, I think, because when did they announce it? They announced Rock versus Punk. It was, I believe it's when was it when Bryan turned heel? But this was like months before. Rock came back, like, I think months before, and announced that he was, I think it was like WrestleMania, not WrestleMania.
He was the host.
He was, no. Like, he came back for, it was a special Raw. I think it was like Raw 1000 or something like that. It was like one of those.
They're always celebrating something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was something like that. And Rock came back and he told everybody, Royal Rumble, I'm facing whoever's champion. And it just happened to be CM Punk. CM Punk was still in the ring, and that's when CM Punk was saying, I'm going to be the champion and all this. And if I remember right, that's when Bryan turned heel. I think he attacked The Rock or something, or no, Punk attacked Rock or something. It was something like that.
I have to go back in the archives for that.
I forgot which one of them turned heel. I think it was Punk who turned heel. I think he attacked. Yeah.
I think it was Punk, because I think
Punk
supposedly he was supposed to be the heel in this. Yeah,
Bryan was already a heel, and then I think Rock attacked Bryan, and then Punk attacked Rock, and that's what it was. Yes, that's what it was. I got it. I just had to mix up. But just imagine if The Rock had stayed, in that time and had a proper lead up to it, because I think they only came and talked like 2 times after that. And this was months ahead of the Royal Rumble. I can't imagine the feud, the topics, and the promos that would have happened between those two gentlemen. I couldn't imagine it.
All right, so my last person, because I feel like there is one more person, but I'm gonna leave that person to you, because I feel like you're gonna like spontaneously combust when you talk about these two people together. So my last person, again, talking about a rematch of sorts, because I feel like we never really, to my knowledge, got that rematch. Brock Lesnar and The Rock. I don't recall if we ever got that rematch. I don't think we did.
No, we never did.
To think about, essentially The Rock was like Brock's first big challenge. Like he'd been whooping ass for months. He just pretty much ran through, sort of the lower to mid card in his first big time feud with the champ at SummerSlam, The Rock. He beats The Rock. The Rock leaves for another hiatus, and then he just kind of goes on to be the next big thing. And again, if we're talking The Rock staying, just think about if they had crossed paths later on, because it was well documented. Brock Lesnar, scary progress. Like, he came in as a rookie and was just on another level. So think about The Rock, running into a more experienced and even more dangerous Brock Lesnar. Like, think if he ran into the Brock Lesnar that we know that he would eventually become. Think about how crazy that was. And think about the ready-made story that had to essentially kind of be stuck in The Rock's craw. Like, as a character, this rookie comes in, he beats you for the title, and then you don't get your rematch. You just kind of, it never happens. And then he goes on to become one of the biggest stars. It's like, I would think you'd want, as Bianca Belair would say, I would think you'd want your lick back. I would think that's kind of been one of those things. He talked about how he never, it took him 3 tries to finally beat Stone Cold at WrestleMania. think about how that must feel to, you met Brock Lesnar once, you got beat, and then you never got that match. So if he'd stayed, I think eventually they would have had to have that match again. And just think about how intense that would be and that story going into it. I would want to see that again.
Most definitely. You know, Brock and Rock. I mean, honestly, you know, and I'm gonna. This is also kind of jumping the gun for me too, but I mean, that probably could have. That feud alone might have kept Brock in the WWE. I mean, it would have put him on maps, you know, bigger than he was, having a continuation feud.
Yeah.
I
think they would have had to maybe prolong it. Like, I definitely think he needed that Taker feud because that really kind of put things into high gear. But if they ever ran it back later, I would want to see a more mature, experienced Brock Lesnar and The Rock. That's what I would want to see, because I'd want to see that growth. Not that I wouldn't want to see maybe a rematch after, but I think it would have been safe to say The Rock wouldn't have beat Brock Lesnar in the rematch if you're just giving Brock the title. I think that title win was to establish Brock, so I don't think they'd want The Rock losing twice to him like that. So I think
I think it's fine. The thing is, and this is the thing about The Rock, that I think people do give him this credit for sure when I would say this. The Rock does not care about putting someone over.
Right. I understand.
So and The Rock knows the business as much as he does, I don't think there would have been a problem. I don't think he would have had a problem with having Brock beating him twice. I really don't. And have a similar thing to Austin and Rock, like you mentioned, where Rock had, you know, it took 3 times before he can beat Austin at Mania. I don't see why they couldn't do that again with Brock. It would have made Brock better.
Would you rather see a rookie Brock beat The Rock again, or would you rather see a more experienced Brock beat him again?
Do I have to choose one, or can I say
yes? You have to choose one.
Okay, so if I have to choose one, then I think you can do a more experienced Brock. But I think you can easily have, like you mentioned before, like the Undertaker feud needed to happen for Brock. But you could have spaced it out. The Rock didn't have to automatically go after Brock Lesnar after he lost at SummerSlam.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I think you could definitely do it. But yeah, it's The Rock and it's Brock Lesnar. I think either way you would have been gold. I think you can, and you could have a mature feud and it would still be great. Similar to what I said with Cena, you could have had him as Thuganomics, and then you could have had him as, you know, Hustle, Loyalty, and Respect. So either way, you're still going to get 2 great feuds or 1 great feud. It doesn't matter.
All right, I can agree with that. All right, so we've come to this point in the show. There's one more feud we can talk about. Probably, I can't remember a feud that's been rumored and anticipated for so long.
I'm actually going to stop you right there.
No? Okay.
I'm actually stop you there because I'm not mentioning that feud.
Why?
Not yet. And this is why. Because I want to get to, before we talk about that, because that is coming. Don't get me wrong. In my case or my list of content that I have for you today. Okay, that is coming. But I don't want to jump to it yet because I have a lead up into it. I want to get into the next set. So we talked about matchups with The Rock, okay? But I want to talk to you, Sasha. Now, I'm pretty sure you have some written down somewhere. You know, we got to really dive deep into this, okay? How does The Rock staying in the WWE after not being successful in a what-if situation, how does that truly affect the WWE? How does that affect the company? How does that affect other superstars? How does that affect our opinion about The Rock?
Well, that's a good question. As far as him staying impacting the company, I mean, we just talked about how, you know, he finally beat Austin at WrestleMania 19, and that ended up being Austin's last match. You can argue that that was probably the last time like he was, well, a little bit after Goldberg. That was the last time he worked a full-time schedule for a very long time. I think the company as a whole, even though they had a bit of a low period trying to rebuild and get bigger stars, but I think it would have helped the WWE to keep The Rock around. I think when he did leave for Hollywood, he was at his peak, arguably. Like, he was huge. Like, I think the true mark of a extremely successful wrestler is if you can get like a casual, even a person that doesn't watch wrestling, if they can identify you. I think that's a huge thing. And The Rock was definitely at that level. So I think it definitely would have benefited the WWE to keep The Rock, on the roster if he just didn't go to Hollywood.
Well, real quick, because I want to jump on something you said. So they would obviously, yes, they want to keep The Rock on a roster, but how does that affect truly as a... So, all right, I guess it's the best way to say it. So we have the Attitude Era, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we went into which era?
The Ruthless Aggression Era.
The Ruthless Aggression Era. The question to you, though, is would that era even have happened? You see, that era was basically a time when they did not really have a number one guy. They lost the number one guy when The Rock left. That was their, pretty much, they never really had a number one after Austin, because Austin was officially done. Rock was officially gone. And now Vince needed something to spice it up, because I think during that little midway point, wrestling was at a time where, I mean, when you have to rely on Stone Cold being a commissioner or a sheriff, I should say, to get ratings and to consistently be good, there's that's tough. That's tough. But if you still have The Rock, the question is then, how does that, affect everyone else that like the Cena, I know we mentioned Cena as possible matchups, but we're assuming Cena gets to that level if The Rock is there.
I mean, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of that. You're right. I mean,
how does the trajectory of WWE change if Rock stays? I think that's my question to you, Sasha.
I mean, I think it was going to be inevitable, because if you think about it, The Rock was 7 years by the time he finished. I mean, okay, look, again, we're assuming that he stays, but let's just say, starting in 2003, that's already 7 years in. I get what you're saying. I still feel like the Ruthless Aggression Era was going to be inevitable, because you're looking around, a lot of those guys maybe who weren't on the same level of notoriety outside of wrestling were definitely starting to get older. And I mean, I'm talking about people like Taker and Shawn Michaels and Triple H. I mean, granted, they would go on for damn near another decade to wrestle.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Imagine what how old was The Rock in 2002 or 2004 or whatever, that the time span that we're beginning at. Well, I think we're starting in 2003. So how old was Rock in 2003?
He was 2003. He was 31.
He was 31.
Yeah.
So if we're talking like he's staying, that means the way I'm assuming we're speaking of is The Rock is going to just have a regular wrestling career, where normal wrestling WWE career like Triple H had, like Orton's having now, like Edge would have probably had he not got injured, all these things. He's wrestling to at least 40 something, mid 40, let's say early 40s, mid. So that's 14 years of The Rock.
But that's what I'm saying. I feel like the Ruthless Aggression Era was going to be inevitable, but maybe it would have been starved off another year or two, but it had to happen because, like I said, you have all these people, whether we want to admit it or not, like that was pretty much the Attitude Era. I feel like ended at WrestleMania 17. Like that's when I feel like it ended, because then you had the invasion and it was that weird kind of moment.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying it ended. All right, then if you're going by that, then they had to go into a different era.
Yeah, you had to. Like,
okay, I understand your point.
Yeah, like I get what you were saying though, because you essentially are saying, you know, that ruthless aggression era, and I think two things can be true in this instance. I think that you could say the Attitude Era ended at WrestleMania 17, but you could also say it also ended when you lost The Rock and Austin, because they were the two biggest names of the Attitude Era. So I think two things can be true, because they both happened. I mean, what was it, 2001?
Yeah,
in a 2-year period.
Yeah, 2001 was 17. 2000. Yeah. So yeah,
within that 2-year period, right? But like I said, then after that, you still had to. Like I said, you had HBK, but we weren't really sure how long he was gonna go. The Undertaker was just coming back from a hiatus. You had Triple H. He had that chokehold on the title over on Raw. And then you had people like Brock Lesnar, who was coming in. Like, the business was already kind of transitioning over at that time. You know, it was already kind of having to change, especially since WCW died. Like, it really had to, because you would argue that's the reason why they had to go to the Attitude Era, because of WCW. Now that it's gone, you know, not to say there was no reason, but I mean, that was pretty much the catalyst for everything starting.
For sure. For sure.
So, like I said, I think I can see where your point, but I think it was inevitable. I think it was already starting to change. But The Rock being there, I think, would have added an interesting layer to the fact that you had the biggest star from the Attitude, one of the two biggest stars from the Attitude Era, moving into this new era. I think that would have kind of gone along with, we were talking about these new feuds or these people that are coming up. I think it just added more of a layer to it. And I think that would have definitely helped some situations, but I don't think it would have stopped the era from coming necessarily.
Okay. That's good.
But I think the last part was how would it impact people because he didn't make it in Hollywood? Is that what the last one was?
Yeah, like how does that affect just people in wrestling as well? And I meant more their careers as well. You know, how does it affect their careers? Even
are we talking inside or outside of the ring?
It could be both.
I mean, I think we kind of touched on the inside. You know, having that big star there as that rub. We kind of talked about that with some of the feuds. I think outside, if he hadn't made it, then I think it would have. I mean, we have to kind of call a spade a spade. You know, I think I said earlier in the show, Hogan was kind of like the first one that they thought was going to make it. And then look how long it took for somebody else. Not to say that there weren't other wrestlers in movies, but like these huge blockbuster movies, it took damn near, 20 years before somebody else came. Because I think was it 1982 was Rocky 3, and then 2001 to 2002 was The Mummy Returns and Scorpion King. That's 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, would it have taken this long? I don't know. But again, wrestling was always kind of like the outlier of entertainment, you know? So I think it definitely would have impacted. I think The Rock making it in Hollywood was definitely something that opened the door for like your Cenas and your Batistas, you know, Edge, Seth Rollins, you know, he's gonna be in a Marvel movie. You know, Becky Lynch is doing some acting. I think without him being successful, I think it would have taken like another generational talent. I don't know if it would have taken as long, but I don't think Hollywood would have been as open. But then again, I mean,
I would say different. I honestly think the door would have closed.
Really?
Yeah, and this is I think what proves it is even with The Rock being successful in Hollywood, the next time, who's the next star that became big from
Cena.
Hollywood?
Cena.
You're either gonna say Cena or you can argue Batista, right?
I think Cena.
Cena's probably bigger overall
Yeah.
now, but the next big role after you could say after The Rock's Fast Five appearance, the biggest role that someone's had was Batista. That's why I throw him in there as Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. I would say the role was big, but
Yeah, I know the suit as an overall though. Yes, Cena. I agree with you on Cena.
because I would think that people knew more. People knew more about Cena from wrestling than they did Batista.
No, yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why I wanted to make sure. That's why I mentioned him only because of just the role. It was such a big one. But
Who
either
do you
way,
think is the best actor though? Like, not movie star, but the best actor
between Batista and Cena,
between anybody. Like if you wanna-
anybody?
no, I'm not anybody. Like if you look at Rock.
No,
Cena,
I know what you mean. Out of the
Yeah.
wrestlers,
Yeah. Who do you think?
honestly, it might be Batista.
That's what I was gonna say that too. I think he's such an interesting case because it's like you're looking at crossing over, but he wants to be like an actor.
Yeah, he wants to
Like he wants
those roles that are
yeah,
specific.
he wants to actually act. Not saying that the other ones don't act, but it's kind of like it took a while for The Rock to kind of find his own lane, and people will say that he kind of plays the same character. But that's his lane. People pay to watch it, whatever. Cena, I mean, he's doing action stuff, but he's also doing comedy. He's kind of, I mean, could you argue he's still kind of being John Cena though on screen? Like he's action packed, but then he makes jokes. Could you kind of say that?
Oh no, yeah, he's definitely Cena.
Whereas Batista is like he's
changing.
He has more range, I would say.
Yes, for sure. I agree with everything you just said there. That is 100%. But I just want to make sure I give Batista some respect.
Yeah, and then I think Edge is another one. I think Edge
tries to do other things other than be Edge. That is true too.
He's going to be in that Percy Jackson movie. I think the new one.
Oh yeah, that's right. I heard.
I think that show on. Yeah, there was a show on Sci-Fi that he was on called Haven. My mom loved that show. Like it was so weird.
I'm not
to like walk in the room.
That one.
It's like these people. It's like they're kind of mutants, but they have troubles. That's what they call them, and just how they get along and just how they live their life. It was very. She loved that show. I thought it was very odd, but Edge was on that show for a long time.
Okay,
So,
I didn't know. I might have to check that out.
yeah, she loved that show. So shout out to Edge. Good
Yeah, okay. But just going back to what I was saying though, like, so just look, The Rock had been successful, but it took damn near how many years just for Cena now for another wrestler to get even close to superstardom in acting. I mean, that's what 2003.
But then Cena had a longer run. Like I think it just took. I think it would have happened sooner for John Cena had John Cena not wrestled for so long.
Well, that's what I mean, though. But you see, Cena wrestled that long to prove a point because he didn't want to be like The Rock.
But then
he turned into The Rock, and he apologized to The Rock because he understood why and everything he did. All the reasons he did what he did.
Is that really such a? Again, I'm not a wrestler. I would love to be in a previous life. But let me ask you this. Let's say that was you. Like if you were a CM Punk or a John Cena and you had someone like The Rock go off to Hollywood, be a big movie star and come back, would that really have bothered you as much as it bothered them?
I would say yes, it would. Because you have to understand, if you're a wrestler, you're wrestling every day. And then the way I think of it like this, okay? You're at a job, you work your butt off every day, and you get no pay. But then you find out a new person gets hired. They come in and they make more than you. and they get to do way less, but they do way less than you do.
I mean, I get that,
It's
but
similar
then
to that. That's the way I see it, at least, because it's like, and don't get me wrong, does The Rock deserve it? Yes.
that's what I was gonna say. Like big picture, like he didn't just
But if
come
I'm
off the
that
streets.
person, if I'm CM Punk, if I'm CM Punk's already being disrespected in a way already, and The Rock's not even there.
Yeah.
Now The Rock is coming in, and then that's just another person pissing me off and taking my spot. I understand that.
But then is that really The Rock's fault, or is
It's
that
not The
just,
Rock's
is he
fault.
just it's like collateral damage for the greater, the greater cause, which is that you're angry at the company.
Right. No, I don't. It's not The Rock's fault. Like I said, The Rock did nothing wrong. He earned it. He earned that right.
I mean, I guess I understand why they were upset, but then I guess bigger picture, and that even kind of goes with, people like Logan Paul and the Bad Bunny coming in. It's like, if you look at it from the grand scale of things, that's just opening more doors and opportunities for the product to be seen. But I understand why, because you're the one making the towns every night. So I get that. And I'm not saying that it's not a legitimate reason to be upset.
Well, you could argue that The Rock started that.
Right.
The Rock is the one that started having the super, coming back and having these Hollywood names come in, like the Logan Paul, now like Bad Bunny and stuff like that. Rock started all that.
I mean,
so
he started, or he kind of like, because I mean, you can go further back in celebrity involvement, but
celebrity involvement, but we never had them. Besides, I'm not counting WrestleMania 1 where they main evented. That was just that was different, but they've never been on the take over the show type thing like Logan Paul has. I mean, Logan Paul main evented a mania, not a mania. He main evented a pay-per-view against the champion Roman Reigns. And Bad Bunny hosted a show and then stole the whole show. Like, they were treated as the biggest draws entering the show that they were in. I don't think that's really ever been done since Rock, or even prior to that. Now, I could be wrong, but even like when Drew Carey came, he wasn't treated as, it's Drew Carey, he's gonna, do these things and feud with Kane and main event a pay-per-view or anything like that.
Can we briefly stop and talk about how I need my guy Bob Barker in the Hall of Fame? My guy's not getting any younger. Drew Carey's already in the Hall of Fame. I'm just saying.
I thought it was going to happen last year.
Me too. My boy's 99. I need them to get this post haste. So we'll be waiting for it.
No, I agree. I like Bob Barker. His little thing with Jericho was awesome.
Yes. So if you're out there and you hear us, Bob Barker.
I'm going to bend you over my knee.
Exactly. 2024, Bob Barker Hall of Fame.
That would be cool.
Digress.
But yeah, just going back, I just think that The Rock was just, he affected so much, and I don't know if he was, unsuccessful in his career. Will we have seen what we see now with the Logan Pauls, with the Bad Bunnies and stuff like that? We saw celebrity appearances. That's never going to change, but I don't think it would have been on the level that we're getting these guys.
I can see that. All right. So
now,
okay, let's say now. Can we do it? Well, you.
Okay. So this is the thing. So I have to continue. So one of the reasons why I saved this for later is because I did want to get into how this affect other wrestlers. I think you did a great job with talking about how it affects them outside, but I still want to continue about how it would have affected them inside the ring, because I think that's the most important. And I think that one of the things there's several things that I think The Rock could have done to just enhance other wrestlers' careers. I don't know if you thought of this, but it came to me yesterday. And it was such a great idea. So, what was a faction that The Rock was in?
Which one? He was in the Nation of Domination, and he was in Corporation. Yeah.
Nation of Domination. I think that one thing that we could have gotten, for sure, The Rock was we would have gotten more heel Rock. I think a heel Rock. We've seen how great he is as a heel in his early days with the corporation. We got to see it, when he was Hollywood Rock. I think that was another thing. But I think that a modern day Nation of Domination, and I say modern day, I'm thinking more. This would have been in the early 2000s. I mean, or like mid 2000s to late 2000s. I think that is something that we could have gotten. And this is the team that I'm thinking. Okay, so I need you to sit back. Okay,
I'm sitting.
Now think of the Nation of Domination. They consisted of Farouk, The Rock. You had Mark Henry, you had Godfather, and you had D'Lo, right?
Right.
Okay, so imagine a Nation of Domination. Now this 2000, let's say 2007, 2008. Okay, I believe all these guys were in the WWE at this time. So please, I didn't look that up, but I'm pretty sure they were. Okay, The Rock as the leader, so he's been the Farouk. Okay, you would have had Bobby Lashley as the Mark Henry. So this is young Bobby. Okay. And he was a force back then. Then you got Shelton Benjamin as the D'Lo. He was the great wrestler. D'Lo was a great wrestler. He was a high flyer. D'Lo was a high flyer. He had some attitude, but he also, if he was with a group, he's a lot better in groups, as we've seen with Angle and Team Angle and all that. Okay. And then as a potential future Rock, because now the only thing is I'm not sure how old he was during this time. But imagine Montavious Vontae Porter, MVP, as like the young Rock. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know.
I'm just saying.
I'm just being honest here. Look, I get back in the day in the Nation of Domination, and man, I know we talked about the Hurt Business getting back, but sometimes I really don't like the idea of you putting all these black dudes together on a stable just because they're black dudes. I don't know. That bugs me. I don't know. I don't really see.
I mean, just look, everyone I just mentioned, besides D'Lo, and maybe MVP. I don't know maybe not MVP, but everyone had. Well, no, I was gonna say Hall of Fame. I just forgot Benjamin was in the Hall of Fame, but pretty much everybody had great singles careers from that left that faction. Mark Henry went on to have a Hall of Fame career. Godfather, Hall of Fame career. D'Lo had a good career. He was a Hall of Fame, but it was good career. Several-time European champion, Intercontinental champion, I believe tag team champion, stuff like that. Rock, obviously we know what a Rock is. And then Farouk, obviously we know what Farouk is. I think another faction with The Rock in charge would have been great. And then you could have built MVP, who MVP at that time was building up to be like a main eventer. I think he screwed up outside of WWE, which is what caused him to drop down. But imagine if he had a mentor like The Rock and stuff, or imagine Bobby Lashley, young Bobby Lashley, gaining that, he already got to big heights in the WWE, when he got to defend Trump versus Umaga and Vince. So he got to high levels. They saw him as a star. He was an ECW champion and stuff like that. But I think he would have got even bigger had he had been around a guy like The Rock. He could have been like a Batista type thing as well, evolution style. I'm just saying.
I don't know. I feel like at a certain point, I think The Rock was better by himself. I get what you're saying, the faction to kind of help along the new talent, but I feel like The Rock is a kind of character where once he hit a certain point, it would have been awkward to pair him with somebody else. or have a faction or anything like that. Like,
Well, see, we never really got to see it because he left the WWE.
but I'm saying, like, his character, like, even when, okay, so outside of him pairing with someone like a Mick Foley or something like that, it just, I don't know, it was just weird to see him. He just kind of seemed like that he was in his own space, you know? I think when he was first coming up, it made sense because he was trying to find his way. I feel like when he eventually found his way, he did better on his own. So I don't see The Rock.
So you don't think Hollywood Rock, for example, right? That type of rock, because obviously he wouldn't be Hollywood Rock, but you don't think Hollywood Rock wouldn't have a stable or people around him to protect him?
I mean,
that's his.
I think
that he would have loved. He had security guards. You think he's not going to get other wrestlers?
But I still think a lot of the act was him. I think, even though he's a heel, and on paper it would make sense to have somebody around him. I still think the central appeal of the character was him. It was him. I don't think, and think about this. It's like, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd want to be in a faction with The Rock, and because his personality, everything is so big, I feel like it would overshadow. I think the idea that it would help would be good, but think about, that's like putting, you know, and this might be a bit of a stretch, but that's like putting Stone Cold with somebody else. That aura, that space that he occupies in the world of wrestling is so big, it would overshadow who he was with. Think about when they tried to pair him up with Triple H in the 2-man power trip.
That was awesome, and it didn't even get to continue because of injury. So I get what you're saying, but no, because that's not fair. We didn't get to really see it. But he got hurt.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but what was the biggest complaint when Stone Cold turned heel that people had?
That's because they loved him so much.
Exactly. They didn't want to boo him. He had already reached a level where he was too big. And I think The Rock had hit that level too. To say that he's going to go and lead a faction, it would have to be something really momentous. Like, it would have to be people, I wouldn't say on his level, but I mean, even then, it would be hard to find someone. I think he's too big to lead a stable. And that's no disrespect.
Okay, but this is the thing. I would think that many people thought Hulk Hogan was too big as well.
I mean, yeah.
And what happened? He turned heel and had the greatest heel turn of all time. You're telling me?
Okay, but then when he came back to the WWE with NWO, what happened?
But that's different. He was successful having a group as a heel for.
But that's because it was. I would argue that's because it was new. No one had seen that before.
We've never seen. Now that's my point. We only got Hollywood Rock because he came back. First off, the fans they booed him as regular Rock. When he was still full time, they booed him against Hogan. Okay? The Rock turned that into a heel run on his return.
Right.
You're telling me someone as great as The Rock couldn't have turned that later down the road?
I guess my argument to that would be The Rock had already gone back and forth. He had been a heel, he had been a face. You know, he'd been a heel, he'd been a face. Like, he had done all that. I think the thing that made Hulk Hogan's heel turn so special, it was that it was new. He had been a heel. I mean, he had been a face his whole career, and then the heel thing came. And I think it was the fact that he turned heel and that he had changed companies. It was a lot of things that kind of made that moment happen. I still think no matter what, Hogan, I wouldn't say that he was bigger than the NWO. I mean, he kind of was. He was.
I mean, yes,
Hogan,
but still. I mean, the NWO still built.
But you're talking about like taking people who are relatively new and buildings. Like Hall and Nash weren't new; they weren't on the level of Hulk Hogan, but they
of course, yeah,
strong enough personalities. They had already been around long enough. They had already kind of established themselves, and they had that kind of confidence and swagger to kind of keep that going. If you're talking about just building new stars, the Lashley's and the MVPs and stuff like that. Think about that pressure to try to do that when you're standing next to the biggest star in the company, like one of
Pressure builds diamonds.
True, but then it's like Lashley's not gonna all of a sudden turn into this mega star because he's with The Rock.
We don't know that.
I don't think so.
I think that he could have.
I think The Rock.
I think, and this is going to lead into the very, my very last thing. But I think that current storylines show you that even though the main person is the overall focus, that the others around them can become stars as well. And we've seen that with current storylines.
Right, I agree. I absolutely.
So I don't see how a person as great as The Rock, who I don't believe would have stayed face the entire time from past 2003, because he's not a person that likes to be complacent, okay, would have stayed face the entire time and not one time been a heel. I just don't see it. He just, to me, there's no way he's doing what Cena did, where Cena was healed pretty much from 2005 till today. There's just no way.
We're gonna have to agree to disagree. I just don't think The Rock and his character, he is best suited by himself. Even with Hollywood Rock, I don't see it.
Yeah, but an older Rock would have been different.
I don't know.
I mean, like I said, we're talking about late 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s. This is that era.
If anything, I feel like
that's him around 40.
I don't see it. Like I said, I'm not saying that they couldn't. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm just a little short-sighted on that.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Maybe we'll have to. Like I said, we'll have to agree to disagree. I don't see it.
And lastly, I guess we can go ahead and talk about the main thing. At least my main thing about The Rock and what he would have affected. I think that obviously right now, what storyline is dominating professional wrestling? That is the Bloodline.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if it would have been on the level that it is now, but I do believe that we could have potentially gotten an earlier version of the Bloodline. Now, we got the Bloodline. It was 3 years ago? It's been 3, so that's 2020 that we got it. Roman started when?
2000.
Was it 13? 13? Okay, and then the Usos was around the same time, I believe, as well.
The Usos been there. Man, they've been there a long time. They got there before.
Yeah, they were there before Roman. So I want to say if they were there, like, let's just say 2011-ish or something around there. I think we've gotten the Bloodline story a lot earlier, or maybe a form of it, or maybe even the beginning stages of it.
It was 2009.
2009 they joined. Okay, so Rock would have been in the company. He would have been 38 years old around then. Now, I don't think you start with them immediately, but I think maybe a year or two later. So let's just say 2011, 2012, we get that. That's Rock at age 41. That's like the prime of his career. And I think that we could have gotten a Bloodline-ish type story. Now, I don't think Paul Heyman was around back in that time. I can't remember if Paul Heyman was still there or not. So obviously the story probably wouldn't have been as great. But like I said, I think it would have been a nice precursor into what we're seeing now. With Roman coming in, now that means unfortunately we probably don't get the Shield as is. Now, it probably would have worked out anyway, because if you remember, Roman wasn't really supposed to be a part of that team anyway. I forgot the person it was supposed to be actually, but
It was
Roman would be
Cassius Ono.
Cash's owner. That's right. So you know, Roman would have been able to start with this group, with The Rock. He kind of it was funny is he could have been like the solo to The Rock's bloodline. Now, according to you, you're not a fan. Well, you don't think Rock would have been great in groups, but I don't see how that can be true. I've seen The Rock in groups before. Now he wasn't the main player, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be. And having his family around was one thing he did care about. He loves his family. You start off with like the beginning stages of the bloodline-ish type story that could have eventually led into the greatness that we're seeing now. And I think that would have caused Roman's beginning of his career when he was a face. I'm talking strictly his singles run. I think that would have helped overcome that. He wouldn't even have to have worried about being booed as a face, because by then people would have already loved him from his earlier experiences in this Rock bloodline-ish feud or storyline that could have happened.
All right, get out your pitchforks because it might be time for me to have my moment. I don't necessarily know if I want to see Roman and The Rock at this point. I don't. I think, as rough as it was, I think Roman needed those years where he got booed. Yes, it wasn't his fault that he got booed, but I think that made him who he is today, and I think he needed that. I think, again, kind of like the parallel with The Rock, I think that they needed those, like you said, with even with Y2J and Punk. They needed that adversity. They needed that chip on their shoulder to propel them. I don't know if I want to see The Rock and Roman. Like, I feel like this has been a match that's been rumored for so long. Like, the last few Rumbles, everybody, I think this is like the first year, people were kind of like not saying like The Rock is going to come back and confront Roman. Like, every time he would win, they're like, The Rock is going to come back. He's going to be the one. At this point, I think it's been too long. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't think it's needed at this point. I think that if they were going to do it, it should have been done earlier on, because if they had done it, I don't see any reason why Roman wouldn't have walked away with the dub. Like, this can't end with anything to me but Roman winning. Like, The Rock can't just walk in and beat Roman Reigns, because then it's like, why? I think at this point, the character work that has been done, I think the story that has been done with the bloodline, I think this needed to be exactly the way it was. I don't think it needed The Rock. And even though I put it on the list as a potential feud, I probably would say it's one of the ones I would least likely want to see at this point, because I don't feel like Roman needs it anymore. I think sometimes I kind of feel like it's low-hanging fruit. You're like, oh, they're related. They're both Samoan. The Rock did this. Like, yes, they have that family connection, but I don't think they need it at this point. I think Roman has established himself well enough without it. I think anything else bringing towards it's kind of like, I feel like it'd be kind of shoehorning it in just to have it. Because what can you say? The Rock, is he going to try to come after and be the tribal chief? Like, I don't think so. Like, yeah, he definitely had, an impact as far as, kind of helping he was one of the ones to pave the way for someone like a Roman and the Usos. He definitely wasn't the first, but he definitely was probably the biggest, most recognizable person. But I just don't feel like he needs it. I don't feel like it's needed anymore. I think if they were going to do it, they should have done it already. I don't know. And I don't think them being associated I don't think like a faction with a bloodline happening earlier would have worked either. I think everybody needed to do. I feel like this was the best form, and this is how it needed to happen. I think Roman needed to be in the Shield. I think all that stuff needed to happen. I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, if you're in a famous wrestling family, there are certain people where it makes sense that you start them off with that connection, like, oh, okay, like you might reference it a little bit, but then you kind of have to leave that behind and let them establish. Like when Randy Orton first started, yeah, he was third generation. That's what kind of got people to take notice, but then he broke off and became his own thing. Whereas someone like a Charlotte Flair, she, whether it's good or not, I feel like she's just now kind of starting to be seen as something separate from her father. It took a really long time. I don't think starting Roman off that way would have benefited him as well as you think. I think he needed to come in the way he did. I don't think he needed that. But that's the thing.
See, this is the thing. And believe it or not, I actually do agree with you on everything you just said. I don't think that Roman needed. I think that the way it happened is perfect. But we have to understand what this whole thing is about. This is a what if scenario. So I'm not saying that if, let's say, the Bloodline story had happened around with Rock there earlier, would have made things better. In fact, I don't think it would have, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't have happened, and doesn't mean that it couldn't have been something good at that time too. And I think that's the thing. Now, just referencing back to what you were saying about The Rock and Roman not needing to happen and all that. Now, I still think that a Rock Roman scenario could still be in the works, and I think it can help the story even more by that happening. I think that we're seeing Jay and Jimmy do their thing besides Roman and all this. What if they it just at one point, sometimes you may not know, sometimes you need backup. Maybe they want to support someone else, is all I'm gonna say. And what if it's The Rock? Just saying. I think that could work perfectly into the storyline with Roman and Rock. I think that is something that could still happen, and I think it's something. I don't think it needs to happen, but I don't think that it would hurt the story at all. If anything, I think that adding a Rock sprinkle in there would definitely enhance our Bloodline story.
I would want to do a live show if that ever happened. Like, if we ever had The Rock versus Roman Reigns, I need to experience you as that's happening in real time. I don't want a secondhand account. I need to see what you're going to do, because The Rock is clearly your favorite, and we know how you feel about your tribal chief. Who would you pick? Who would you want to win?
I mean, I will have to save it for then.
See, this is the kind of stuff. This is riveting content right here, people. I want to see it.
I don't know. I have no idea what I do. Honestly, I have no idea.
But do you think it could still happen? But do you think that the time has passed where it would have been a little bit like the fever pitch of when people wanted it? Because I don't feel like people are talking about it as much now.
Yeah, people are not talking about it only because they know it can't happen based on The Rock's schedule. But
is the Bloodline story too strong too? Like, I feel like it's kind of
the story. There's no. Let's just like this. There's no story too strong for The Rock. Let's just say that. I'm sorry. The Rock into itself in a feud between, like, let's say trying to think of one.
Wouldn't you feel a little
Mello and Baron Corbin's feud from they had a while ago.
Don't be silly. Don't be silly. What I'm saying,
I'm just saying, The Rock could have entered himself in that feud if he wanted to. It doesn't matter.
Unless they had an amazing plot device to make this happen, I'd be a little disappointed that I feel like you kind of just fit The Rock in there, because the Bloodline story has just been
I think, look, there's just so many things that could happen that can make it true. You know, it's look, I don't want to talk about it because that's I'm sure. Look, if it happened, there's just no way it would hurt the story. I'm just gonna say it like that.
I feel like if it was to happen, it would have to happen after this portion of the Bloodline story is over.
I think it could easily infuse into it. I think it could easily.
See how I think because I feel like that would take away from.
That's a topic for another day, Sasha. That's a topic for another day. We can't get into it. We cannot.
Look at you, got me going. All right.
We can't. You know why we can't. So
I know. Okay.
So we'll talk about it one day. I promise you.
All right.
But let's go back and just to The Rock. Let's get back to The Rock. Let's end it with The Rock, okay? Because look, we both know, we've mentioned several times how great The Rock is. His presence in the WWE, if he never, left and was successful in Hollywood, I think that we all know that wrestling's popularity would have remained high. I think that it would have had an effect on many people's careers, whether they were in a faction, whether they were not, whether they were just feuding. We've mentioned so many feuds that, we could have potentially saw, matchups that never before seen. I'm sure there's plenty more that we didn't mention, that I would love to hear from our fans. Definitely send us comments and messages about all that, because I know, like I said, we missed some people. But at the end of the day, The Rock is the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. He would continue to be the most electrifying man no matter what year it was, even if he was still wrestling today. Which I obviously highly doubt he would still be wrestling now if he was full-time this whole time. But if he was, he'd still be the most electrifying. But I will say there is one last thing that I think The Rock could have been, that would have been kind of followed along the similar lines of what Stone Cold did. I think The Rock could have been an excellent GM, like to be the authority figure in the WWE. He could have been a great, whether he'd been a face or a heel, more than likely he'll be the face. Think of it like what Foley was, what Austin was. It would have been cool, him as an authority figure in some capacity. I think would have been very, very entertaining stuff. And I think he would definitely been able to pull it off and be so great at it. What do you think about that last point?
I don't know. He's such a
I'm not liking that you don't like my ideas.
I'm not that I don't like it. He's just such an interesting case. I feel like, but then again, I mean, maybe if he had presented Stone Cold to me as an authority figure, I would have. No. I'm just saying, maybe back in the day, if you had presented it to me, I'd have been like, I don't know. I'm not saying I don't like it. I would have to think about it more. I would give it a chance to see. I would, but
I'm just saying, imagine Seth Rollins, the heel Seth Rollins is complaining, and then The Rock comes out, and then he says, "Stop being know your role, shut your mouth. I'm the commissioner. I make the matches. You know what? You versus The Undertaker." I'm just saying,
The Rock
have this Teddy Long moment.
I don't know. I don't know. don't necessarily see it. But again, hey, this is why I don't work there. You're seeing something that maybe I don't see. But
It would have been any time. That just means more mic time each week with The Rock. I mean, who would not want that?
I don't know. I'd rather see him be a referee one more time and do that.
Oh,
But
you could easily do that as a
guest ref
as a commissioner or GM. Be the special guest referee and do a slow count. 1, 2. It doesn't matter if Rock counts to 3. Like, he could easily done that.
I don't know. I don't know if he'd be an authority figure. I just, like I said, The Rock he's an interesting case. He's an interesting character. I feel like he's kind of in a class by himself, and I think that's why it's hard for me to.
If Kurt Angle can do it, he can do it. Okay, even if it's for a short month or 2, I don't even care.
Kurt Angle. I mean, we should do a show about Kurt Angle. But anyway, I digress. Now that I'm thinking about it, I need to give Kurt Angle some flowers. I feel like he's not getting his flowers. But anyway,
just imagine more Rock and Angle. Oh man.
Yeah, the wrestling machine Kurt Angle versus The Rock. Yeah, that would have been like that 2006 run he had before he left for TNA. That would have been different because he wasn't Nook drinking Kurt anymore. So,
or Rock Eddie Guerrero. I don't know if we mentioned that before, but can't remember if we did or when you were talking about Edge. I know you mentioned Eddie, but I don't think you mentioned Rock versus Eddie, even like an actual feud. I think that would have been great as well.
Yeah, that would have been. I could see that. Definitely.
But it's like I said, there's so many things that could have happened. This is obviously obviously there's a what if scenario, so we can only dream that there's a parallel universe that may have some of the things that we got, and it'd be nice if we can cross time and see it, but unfortunately we cannot. We can just hope and dream, and I think these were some great ideas, some great just great content for us to just figure out, exactly answer that question. What if The Rock wasn't successful in Hollywood? I really think this was good. What else you got to say, Sasha? Anything else you would like to say to the people?
I just want to say that, I mean, these what if series are so interesting to do, and I just like that we get to make these deep dives and kind of like armchair quarterback, things like that. It's really fascinating, and I hope the listeners enjoy hearing as much as you like talking about it.
I think they do. I really think they will. If they haven't listened to the Eddie one, I definitely expect them, and hope that they go back to listen to that one and all the other ones that we have planned for you guys. I think that it is, like you said, it's just very fun to do and interesting, and it just makes you. It makes you to like just recognize how great that these people are that we were talking about. Like it just. It's hard to forget The Rock, but it's just, you don't see him every day, so it's always like in the back of your mind, and sometimes you got to bring them back to the forefront just to recognize how great these guys are, and it's really amazing to do. Just the dreaming of all this stuff is really awesome. It's really awesome to talk about, and I thank you for creating this What If series, Sasha, because like I said, this was always your idea. So,
hey man, just love talking about wrestling. So I'm excited for our next one. Let's start working on that one. That's great.
Yes, we're definitely gonna start working on that soon. All right, Sasha, we're gonna end that right there. Another great episode. Can't wait for the next episode that we do. How about you tell the people where they can find the show and everything?
You can find us on social media. Right now we have our Twitter. Is our TikTok up yet? We're working on that still.
No, it is up.
All right, our TikTok at Ringchamps JFS, which is just and Sasha. Again, at Ringchamps JFS. On Twitter, on TikTok. Come visit us. Now we're going to start posting audio clips of the show. Like and share those. If you have friends that are into wrestling, hey, maybe people that aren't into wrestling, share the share the wealth, share the show with them. Listen to these little clips with our previews, just kind of giving you a taste of what we talk about. And then just come. We have questions that we're going to post on our social media after our episodes, and just interact. Tell us what you want us to talk about. You know, we're talking about our What If series. If you have a series that you want to pitch to us, who knows? We'll pick it and then we'll go from there. But you let us know. We're here for you guys. We're obviously here because we love wrestling, but we really want to interact with the fans, because that's one of the coolest things. You know, we are wrestling fans, you know, controversial or not, we are a tight-knit group, you know, whether we're being positive or negative. And again, we're all about, you know, we want to give flowers and share the love that we have for this industry, but we can't do that unless we have people to share it with. So come talk to us.
Facts. All right, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm your boy Justino. She's the one and only Sasha, the legit king. And we're out of here. Peace.
Adios.